Hey there, Internet friends, and welcome to the fourth episode of Season 1 of That Ultimate Video Game List Show. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey from ThatNerdySite.com, and this is the show where each season me and a panel of friends try to create the ultimate top 20 video game list with two main bits of criteria. Only one game per franchise, and only one game per console. Joining me for this first season are three of my fellow nerds from That Nerdy Site, Logan Wilkinson.
Hi there, Trevor.
Hello, hello. Cameron Abbott.
What's going on?
What's going on to you, Cameron? And Frank Bizzani.
What's up, everybody?
What's up?
What?
You can find this show each week on podcast services and on YouTube. Please rate, review, like, and subscribe everywhere you can to help us get some traction in this first inaugural month. If you enjoy the chaos that you're about to hear, you can always support us at patreon.com/thatnerdysite and help us keep the lights on. The way the show works is like this. Each week, the panel will take turns adding a round of games to the list. Once a game is added, all other games from that franchise and that console are out of the running. Games can be submitted, however, for any console that they've been released on, including remasters, but collections of games are not allowed. Additionally, each panelist has a veto that they can use to shoot down a game when it is submitted, keeping all other games of that franchise or that console in the running. Once we've got our list of 20 games selected, the panel will then shift into ranking the list, and the top game at the end of everything will be retired into our Hall of Fame. A quick recap of our previous episodes. In round 1, we had Persona 4 Golden, Final Fantasy VI, The Last of Us, and BioShock added to the list. Round 2 brought us God of War 2018 on the PlayStation 4, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Pokemon Soul Silver, and would-be Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. However, Cameron vetoed that option in week 2. And last week's episode brought us Super Mario Galaxy 2 from Logan on the Wii. Cameron almost did not add Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but he did in kind of response for Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 veto. Frank brought Mass Effect 2 on the list as a Xbox One game because it is backwards compatible over there. And I took all of the PC games and the rest of, I think, the modern generation that we kind of referred to out of the running by bringing Portal to the list as our PC selection. So that brings us to today, where God help us, Cameron gets to kick us off this week. What do you got, Cameron?
I want to hear this.
Chrono Trigger for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
Ooh, okay. That's a choice.
It is a choice. It's like, don't get me wrong, like it's definitely a more popular choice than probably wouldn't be. Usually when people make top 10 lists and they're like historical lists, or they're the top 10 list of the SNES, Chrono Trigger is somewhere on there, if not in like the top 1 or 2 spot. Usually it exchanges that with Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy IV, depending on what kind of Final Fantasy fan you have.
Yep.
Chrono Trigger is one of those games that is very special to me because Chrono Trigger is actually the first like RPG I ever played. It was the first RPG, like JRPG, ever shown to me as as a kid. It was the game that I coveted for such a long time because I didn't have an SNES growing up. My friends all did, but it was the game that I coveted for so many years, and I finally got to own it on the PlayStation with the chronology that came out with it. Downside, it came out with Final Fantasy IV on it as well for the PlayStation 1. Unfortunately, like, that game has some really bad load times. It has some, like, the PS1 version. The SNES version's amazing, but it is one of those games where after a certain point in time, you can beat the game. You'll miss a whole lot of side quests, you'll miss a whole lot of extra stuff going on, and everything you do, and it was actually probably one of the first games where I realized my choices mattered in a game. Because I did that thing where, I want to buy the best sword at the beginning of the game. Cool. I'm going to sell Meryl's locket for it. And the guy's like, "Oh, I'll buy it from you," and Meryl's like, "Actually, no, it's my locket. Like, f off." But then that ends up coming back later on. It's one of those games that actually has like ongoing consequences throughout the entire game, and it's also one of the first games that I've ever seen. And I think it's one of the only games where the main character, the protagonist, your starting character dies, and you can like it's not a required part of the story to bring them back to life or save them in some manner. It is a game that has an incredible cast of characters that I think is still up there, almost unmatched. Like as far as like a pantheon of cast of characters, whether it's heroes, villains, everything in between. Actually interesting like plot twists that happen in the game. Like really cool stuff that actually like these characters live and breathe in this world, and it actually matters for them. For me personally, it's an incredible game that is just near and dear to my heart on such an in-depth level. Being the broke like child I was, I downloaded the ROM of Chrono Trigger. But the problem is that the ROM was bugged on purpose to prevent you from progressing once you made it to the future in that game. So rather than like not being able to play it past that point, I instead just restarted the game and played it over and over and over again. Those first sections are still ingrained in my memory, but it has some of like the coolest boss fights that I've ever played. But on top of that, instead of focusing on just like one single big bad, the game has just this cacophony of villains, this incredible rogues gallery of villains that just makes up an incredible cast of different motivations, different reasons why they're doing things. And then the actual big boss is the actual final boss of the game is this menacing eldritch abomination that is just lurking constantly. And it is both an enemy, it is both like an enemy you're invested in defeating, not just because of the cataclysmic apocalypse that they bring, but also because at a certain point in the game, like I'm not going to spoil it because I still think there's so much about that game that deserves to be played through, even though the game is like 25 years old. It's a game that spans time and space and is about friendships that span those same things. It's about how relying on each other we can overcome anything, even something as incredible, like even something that is on the level of an actual god. And it is just such an incredible game that it introduces cross techniques, which are two techs or three techs, which is essentially people combining their magic and abilities to pull off even more damaging things. You're introduced to characters who are incredible, but you only get to have three party members, and so you swap them out and enjoy playing with each of them. And you have characters like Robo, who is this robot who you just find when he's busted up and like offline, and then you rebuild, and then one of the characters rebuilds him, and he is just the friendliest, most happy-going robot in the entire universe. Because it turns out all the other robots actually want to murder humanity, and so it's incredible.
I feel like Cameron enjoys this game. I mean, like Trevor. We'll start with you. Do you have an objection to Chrono Trigger? Do you have beef for this game? Because I feel like you have the SNES game that you already teased before.
Yeah, I would. So I would first ask Frank or Logan, have you played Chrono Trigger?
Nope, sure haven't.
Frank, how about you?
Yeah, like with Chrono Trigger, I'm not super well versed in a lot of RPGs, and Chrono Trigger is one of those on the list that I actually have finished, and I think I've actually finished it more than once at this point. And always like I think Cameron said a lot of the things that really make that game special, but really like the way that your choice and kind of the things you do, even from like right out the get-go where there's like a carnival, and just the way you interact with people and the things you do kind of interprets how they view you and kind of how it goes down the line. And I definitely think it's kind of amazing just how like all even those small things you don't really think about can have impacts later down the line. And we're talking about like a Super Nintendo game here. And there's I even looked it up just to double check, but there's 13 different endings, and some of those endings are just
Yeah.
kind of insane. And
Yeah, I was looking that up too because one of the things that this game gets kind of celebrated for is it introduced the term New Game Plus.
Mm-hmm.
There were games that had like a New Game Plus mode beforehand, but like this was the first one that really coined that term. And I remember that being one of the standout things is that yeah, you can once you beat the game, you can go back and you can be like, okay, now I've got the thing that I need, and I can have a an ending that happens like basically right at the beginning of the game. You can
Mm-hmm.
pick that ending and stuff like that. Um, I remember that I didn't end up playing it similar to you, Cameron, I think, until the PS1
Yeah.
Final Fantasy anthology that was Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger. Um, and I remember like playing that, and so that being my first introduction to the game isn't a great first
Nope.
introduction.
That is a
It,
bad port. It is a very bad port. It's one of the worst.
yeah, similar to I think what I talked about back when I talked about Final Fantasy VI, the just the way those games were built meant there was loading in between like every fight, and the transitions to fights in Chrono Trigger are like you see the enemies on the map and then they move into position for a fight. And so that causes like a very noticeable lag as opposed to you being on the overworld and then going into a fight where there is like a screen in between the two. So like the DS version is certainly my preferred
The,
way to play
yeah, the
Chrono
DS
Trigger.
version is spectacular. It even
But
adds some new stuff into it. It's phenomenal.
some guy put Pokemon on there instead. So
You know what? There was a lot of soul searching in regards to which DS game to put on. Okay.
Soul Silver searching even.
You
Sorry,
got me.
Frank.
You got me.
Sorry, Frank. I cut you off. Because yeah, I was looking up the endings too.
No, no, like you definitely kind of hit the nail on the head. Like I just think it's amazing how like that's something we just look at as like being totally normal now, like New Game Plus, multiple different endings or like, choice impacting what happens and like how you treat people. But like I said, like we're talking about a Super Nintendo game and that has never ceased to kind of not blow me away, honestly. And I definitely think some of the endings are really just like kind of really cool. And even kind of the one you mentioned was kind of like one of my favorites where if you kind of get powerful enough and get the things you need, you can just kind of finish the game really early on and just kind of avoid everything. And I just think that's like I think that's really cool. And yeah, like I'm definitely a big fan and I definitely am cool kind of letting this one through onto the list.
Oh, also as a cool note, the artist and author of the Dragon Ball series, Akira Toriyama, actually did the character designs for every single character in this game. So it's such a really cool, unique style for a video game that really wasn't like that was really exclusive to actually Enix with his early designs of the Dragon Warrior series, and has kind of defined the look of Dragon Warrior. So for a Square Soft game, not even an Enix game, a Square Soft game having that look was so cool.
I do
On
I
top of that, so yeah,
I do really love like to go off of that as well. Like I do really love how the art style of Chrono Trigger looks and that art and kind of those beautiful covers. And I know you mentioned it too earlier, like the robot. Like what a just an amazing design for kind of like some kind of this like I guess you maybe call it like some kind of steampunky type robot. Like I definitely love those. And I also, while we're talking about it, I would love to give a huge shout out to what an amazing soundtrack Chrono Trigger has, including
oh
that
my
main theme
gosh.
with the clock ticking. Amazing. Like it still holds up to now.
And the sprite work in that game is just unbelievably great. Like the transition from roaming around the world where you do see the other enemies, and then that transition into actual battle where the sprites are so detailed and beautiful. It's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot to love about Chrono Trigger. I remember the first time I actually like played through it realistically. I got to a turning point in the game where it's like you can fight this guy or you cannot. And I was like, this guy's been pissing me off the entire game. I'm gonna fight him, and I didn't realize like the ramifications of that choice until
Mm-hmm.
after the fact. And so like that is something that sticks with me with that game, and the power of choice and the power of um, the variety of those endings and all that stuff. I I can't speak ill of Chrono Trigger, but I am gonna veto it because I
No.
I have another Super Nintendo thing that I want to propose later, if I am given the opportunity. So, yeah,
What?
nothing
Moot point.
against
Done.
Chrono Trigger at all, but yeah, this
Shot
does
down.
I knew
this
this was gonna
draws out
happen.
my veto.
I knew it. I knew it. As soon as Cam said Chrono Trigger for Super Nintendo, I knew it was coming out.
Wait, isn't the rule about
Sorry,
vetoes
Cam.
though that like if I can get Logan
If
and
yeah, if you can convince if Logan and Frank will agree to override my veto, Chrono Trigger will stay on the list. But
See, the issue is that like you can probably convince Frank. I've just never played your video game, so I have nothing for you.
you have nothing for me, but at the same time, Logan,
yeah
like
I
you
got
have
nothing for
nothing against my game either.
Yeah, but Trevor could say a cool game I like for the SNES.
That's why I kind of want to know what
Yeah, there you go.
Trevor's
I-
alternate for
That's
Super
his-
You know what?
Nintendo is.
This mystery box thing is bull crap, Trevor. It's bull crap. I have a really cool one for later. Like that is
I won't even say that. I'm just saying I have a different game that I want to put forth as the Super Nintendo game.
I can't imagine what games you'd want to pick besides Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, except maybe
Super
Final
Mario
Fantasy
World if
IV.
we had Mario still available.
Yeah, Super Mario World's not even available.
Your game's vetoed. Frank, pick your game.
Sorry, Cameron. I made the decision very early on that I was going to veto that, and then your continued argument for why that game is so special to you did make me feel really bad about my decision, but not enough to like withdraw it. So
I swear that your
second
SNES
veto's
pick should be the absolute sleeper hit that we none of us thought of. Otherwise, I'm going to be furious.
I'm very curious, yeah.
I
Because
look
Cameron at
forward
least
to you. I look forward to you being furious, Cameron.
Cameron at least teased what he might be thinking of, or like other games he thought were great on the SNES, other than
Or the
Tony
PS1
Hawk Pro Skater
versus
2,
Tony
yeah,
Hawk
yeah,
Pro
exactly.
Skater 2.
Trevor's going the exact opposite. I'm being like, nah, fuck that. I'm just saying like something's coming down the line. Please be excited.
I know there's a ton of other great, like amazing Super Nintendo games, and I feel like I have some ideas of what you may be trying to pull with here. But I mean, I'll put my support behind Chrono Trigger. I'll vote for it. But I guess Logan doesn't feel me on this game
Yeah.
he's never played.
No, I mean, like,
Yeah, Logan's
that's
like
what I'm like.
Logan's just like, nah, forget it, whatever.
I mean,
Fuck
like
you,
the
Cam.
issues. No, I'm not saying fuck you, Cam. Like I just don't.
This is because I poo pooed on
Super.
or Mario Galaxy
I
2.
don't,
This is why.
I don't give a crap about
This
Mario
is
Galaxy
retribution.
from a week ago. It's like I'm just saying like I don't have. Trevor's game could be a game that I like on the SNES, and this is like I just haven't played your game, so it's like it's as simple as that. This is the risk of picking games people haven't played, where it's like I have no. I feel
Three
nothing
people
one
on this
way or the
panel
other.
have Logan. I'm noticing a trend where I'm noticing that we're picking really classic, like really great games that you've never touched.
Hey, pick better games, I guess. Is what I gotta tell you, man.
I think you should play better games.
Well, that's not gonna get me to help you overturn a veto, my friend. All right.
You already shot me down. I got nothing to lose at this point.
All right,
Frank, what you
Chrono
got?
Trigger off the list.
R.I.P. I mean, it was on other platforms, so there is a chance.
There is hope.
No, because like
Also,
the
it
other,
could still-
it's not
also,
the
it could
other
still-
platforms that it was on are taken.
Was it
now.
not on
Also, it
PSP?
can still theoretically still be put in the SNES spot if we veto Trevor's
That's
pick.
also
If we
true.
don't like it. It's like, yeah, theoretically
true.
it could happen still.
All right, Frank, hit us with your choice.
Oh man.
It's an SNES game.
Then I am
Heel
screwed.
turn,
Yeah. Then if that is the case, then yeah, I blew my veto for nothing. But
So my pick is Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo. Man, I'm looking at my list here and I have a few crazy ones I kind of want to go with, but I think we're gonna
It's
see.
crazy.
I think Logan. I think we're gonna get crazy here because I think we're gonna see this.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see this rise from the grave. Where I think I'm gonna pull back Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, but I'm gonna do it on the Dreamcast this time.
Oh.
I can
Okay.
So
All right. You know what, kids? Yeah. Absolutely.
I already
I'm surprised you didn't go. When you said Crazy, I was like, and then I was like, oh, maybe he's gonna pick Crazy Taxi for the Dreamcast. But no, you're going straight. No, what? I'm for it. Like,
Absolutely.
so I
You don't have a choice anymore, Cameron.
nope, I don't.
I already talked about it a little bit last time, or just why I love Tony Hawk in general, and it's like it is something I deeply, definitely think I love, and I do really feel like it
Mhm.
defined that generation of gaming and just a lot of people that grew up in that time. Like everybody had Tony Hawk. Even unrelated to this, I just talked to somebody the other day who said they got a console just to play Tony Hawk. So, I mean, like it was selling systems, it's not something we necessarily maybe remember like that, but it was at the time. It was huge. And it was a yearly release. Like Activision was still doing that, pumping them out as much as they could. And
Now let me.
go ahead.
Isn't it sad to see how far that thing has fallen?
Oh, a
Yeah,
Like
hundred
I
it
didn't,
percent.
really
I didn't,
is.
I didn't bring it up in the first go around, but like I was definitely thinking about the all of the shenanigans that went around with Tony Hawk 5 a couple years back, and just being like, oh, what a sad sight for
It's
something
like
that
Medal
was
of
like,
Honor.
yeah, such an iconic franchise, just
Hmm.
to see how it has dwindled. And this is also recording this off like a day or so after the I was seeing news that like EA has not renewed the Skate
So
um,
sad.
uh,
Oh, that's interesting
brand.
to note.
So
Because the
Skate
copyright
4.
lawyer came out and said that that's not like that's really like it's not even the people who reported like IGN's fault. The person who originally reported it didn't understand. It's just gotten into the point where they haven't like they still
Haven't
have
re-upped it.
ownership of it, but they just haven't like if they wanted to put out a new skate game, they would have to do some sort of legal thing to like activate their copyright over it. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I know copyright law, like, it is basically like, oh, you pretty much have that IP eternally at this point, as we see with like everything Disney has done. But still, it was a thing I saw in the headlines, being like, oh, well, sorry, Skate fans,
I
but
think
sorry.
for me it's interesting because so this is where it becomes interesting, Frank. I don't fucking like the Dreamcast at all. It's a trash video game console. Like, it's objectively so bad. But here's the thing: there's no other place to get a Tony Hawk game on the list. Like we could do, I guess, 3 came out on the GameCube. I guess we could go that route. Um, but I mean, like, so I won't veto it just for that. But like, I do have to make clear, the Sega Dreamcast is a terrible video game console. One of the worst ever made by like any objective measure. But yeah,
did you
that's,
even own one?
Tony Hawk Pro Skater, man. It's on the list.
Did you ever own a
Like I almost
Dreamcast?
kind
Why
of
would I
want
waste my
to
money on like
back
that?
Logan up on that because
It's terrible. It's a
like I
terrible console. Yeah.
even like I looked it up like and I remember there being some other games and like Crazy Taxi like you mentioned earlier is a great example. But like even literally going through the list of like these are the best games of all time, you have like Seaman and like Shenmue and just like all this stuff that's like what is this even doing? Like I think honestly this
Shenmue
might
was
be one of the
oh my
best
god,
on the entire
I
console
can't
is
with
like this
any of
third
you right
party
now.
skating
Video
game.
games.
I can't with any of you right now. You put a Mario game with motion controls, and
I
you're
can't.
like,
I can't hear you over the sound of the 97 Metacritic and like 50 perfect scores. I mean, like Mario Galaxy is a universally acclaimed game. It's not the same thing as the Dreamcast, which sold 5 units and fucking destroyed Sega. It's like, take a step back here, bruh. All
now
right.
the not including a DVD player inside of it is what ruined it with Sega. All right, not having that extra periphery on it was the problem.
Here's the thing. Tony Hawk
As
Pro
somebody who was
Skater
a
2,
cognizant adult during the time when it was out,
Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, you were like 13 years old.
I was reading magazines. I knew what was going on. I knew what the problems
Tony Hawk
were.
Pro Skater 2 is on the list, and really that means that justice is served. That's all I gotta say.
I do appreciate like I'm looking at Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 on the wiki on Wikipedia, and like you could have also argued for it on the Game Boy Color, or the Nintendo 64.
Iconic.
Yeah, it was on 1 and 2 and even 3 was on N64 and then they were on Dreamcast and PS1.
PS2, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 on the PS2 is the best one, but like all out any Tony Hawk Pro Skater I can get, honestly.
All right. Well, it sounds like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 making the list because
On the great
Logan
console known as the Dreamcast.
on the
Suck it,
Dreamcast, on
Logan.
the Sega Dreamcast. So my pick now. I guess given the beginning of this episode, I should probably throw out my Super Nintendo pick here. Otherwise,
I'll just
Cameron will
automatically
just
veto it. Yeah, when you don't pick an
Cameron will
SNES game
just
now,
bring
yeah.
Cameron will just bring Chrono Trigger back next go round. But I am and uh, given that Logan has a veto, I'm very curious to see how this will play out. But I am putting forth The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past as the Super Nintendo game that I want to put on this list because infinitely better
Ooh.
than Breath of the Wild,
Yep,
which is
okay.
just bad. It
There
is
you go.
it is in my opinion the very best of the Zelda games that sets the template for what Zelda would become. You had the first Zelda and Zelda 2 kind of figuring out and exploring different ideas on the Nintendo, and then you have Link to the Past that comes and says, "Okay, this is what this game is going to look like. You're going to go and collect these things and kind of flesh out the story, and then things are going to twist, and you're going to have to go and collect more things." In particular, I always joke that like they set up the go collect 3 of something and then go collect 7 of something. That is exactly what you get in Ocarina of Time, just in 3D. And so Link to the Past always takes the cake for me because it set the template for that. And as I mentioned when we were discussing Symphony of the Night, you don't suffer the graphical ugliness that is looking at Ocarina of Time today compared to Link to the Past, which is the sprite style, the 2D look of that game still stands out. The fact that they went and basically remade or like made a sequel to it here some 20 years later with the Link Between Worlds game a few years back. And in terms of the Super Nintendo game, I there are a number of other Super Nintendo games that I think are worthy of consideration. And again, I fully cede that Chrono Trigger is an astounding game in and of itself. Um, but you also have like things like Super Metroid or uh, not necessarily I think any of us, but like Star Fox is certainly one of the iconic ones. Earthbound I would put Earthbound in my ranking of like Super Nintendo RPGs. I would put it above Chrono Trigger, just because that aesthetic
Like,
and style
yeah, that's
and
fair.
the Americana love that it portrays just won out for me. Um, but yeah, so those are any number of other Super Nintendo games out there, and I wouldn't fault. I would not fault Link to the Past being vetoed in favor of any of those other games either. But that is, I wanted to put it out there on the list as the definitive Legend of Zelda game for consideration
Now
because
this is what's
my
interesting.
hatred of Breath of the Wild is well documented, well known, and it's not even a hatred. It's just a I think it is a fine game that the rest of the world seemingly thought was a masterpiece of a
Got some
game.
Breath of the Wild haters in
Um,
this podcast.
yeah, and Ocarina of Time, as I mentioned earlier, I think gets gets a lot of love because it takes the formula of Link to the Past and put it in that same kind of vein where Super Mario 64 made us rethink what games can look like in the 3D era. I think Ocarina of Time does that as well, but it just doesn't hold up that great. So that is my submission. The
Mm,
the Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo.
this is where this gets interesting.
You don't have a veto.
I don't have a veto. No, I have some commentary though, and
Can you
this is what makes it
convince
interesting.
Frank or Logan to use theirs?
Oh no, I don't know if I want to though, and this is what I'm trying to. I want to think this out loud with you guys because if we pick this, it's very similar to when we picked God of War for PS4. Once again, Trevor's busting the list to block out games that like I don't necessarily want to be on the list. In this case, like I had a lot of love for Breath of the Wild. I'm not saying that it's definitively the best Zelda game. I don't think it is. But I think it's very interesting. One, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask getting offed is rough. But but I would like, even though I would probably say Majora's Mask probably like it is my preferred favorite Zelda. It's also because it's so counter to the established norm of Zelda. But I will also say that this means that Wind Waker can't be on this list, and I hate Wind Waker.
I'm so offended by this Wind Waker hate.
Listen, Wind Waker looks like garbage and it always looked like garbage. I've
What?
never,
It looked great when it came
I
out.
have
Way to
never
just
had
make
a different
enemies
opinion
on a
on that.
ranking show. Yeah, what a way to make enemies.
Everybody, when they first showed it off in like stills on in magazines, everybody, including me, was like, "That looks terrible." Then the game came out, and people were like, "Oh, you just fall in love with the art style. It's so beautiful. It's so breathtaking." Blah 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 blah. Hated it. I've always hated it. It looks like garbage. Everybody
Cameron
looks
just
like
wants
garbage
his
in that
games to
game.
get vetoed. He's just like asking for it at this point. Gosh.
So I'm saying it right now, Trevor. Even though you vetoed me, I'm not furious about this. One, because Link to the Past is one of like the best games on the SNES. It can easily be up there, in my opinion, with, like you said, Earthbound, Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, these top tier SNES games that really display this magic of this system almost. So I'm not upset. I'm actually very not furious over picking Link to the Past, and I understand your veto now. Also, you get to lock out Breath of the Wild, and I would be benefited because it locks out Wind Waker. So I support it 100%. Thank you for going on this thought journey with me. I'm very happy about it.
For the record, I quite enjoy Wind Waker. I have always enjoyed its art style.
Thank you.
I do not align myself with Cameron on that front.
It doesn't matter because we're allies in this in the end anyway.
Indeed. All right, Frank and Logan, where are you guys at? Where are you guys?
I mean, Logan, do you want to hit this one first? I kind of want to hear hear what
Yeah.
you have to say.
Yeah, what's up? It's your boy Logan, the internet's #1 Zelda hater out there. So here's the thing, like, it's funny because Trevor picked like the weird Zelda game where it's like, I got absolutely no fucking beef with Link to the Past. I got nothing. Like, it's on the list. It's fine with me. Yeah, like he chose one where it's like, I think Link to the Past is beautiful. I think still holds up and is absolutely gorgeous to this day. Like it is probably my personal like second best looking Zelda game after Wind Waker, which is absolutely gorgeous and stunning still. It like there were only 2 Zelda games that I would have realistically even considered vetoing. One would be Breath of the Wild, because obviously, and one would be Zelda 1, which I still get hate about to this day, but it's like whatever. Link to the Past, I have no beef with. I know that people love it. I haven't finished it. I've started it like 4 different times, haven't gotten like through to the end. But yeah, I have no beef with Link to the Past. I have no beef with Zelda in general. I think people have maybe too much of a thing about it, but like that's fine. As for the SNES like aspect of it, it's weird because I've also been on the record just throwing out hot controversial takes that I think the SNES is like not as good as a lot of people do, right? I'm on the record saying like I think the NES is a better console than the SNES. I like that library more than the SNES, right? Because I think for me at least, the SNES is a console of a lot of RPGs and a lot of kind of those style of games, and those are ones that at least in the mold they were in the early to mid 90s didn't appeal to me, right? Like I don't love a lot of those kind of games, and so I am fine with it. And like I mean, again, like I'm not going to be to this at all. Trevor could have said a lot of games I didn't expect this somehow, but I also really respect him. Who would just be like, you know what? Not only am I getting one of my favorite games on the list, but I'm also taking out from the knees Breath of the Wild 2. I gotta respect that, honestly. You have to respect that energy. I will say, for the Ocarina of Time aspect of it, which is Zelda game that I've played and beaten all the way through, I think Ocarina of Time is a good video game. I do think that almost everything from the N64, it is not as good as people remember it being. Like I truthfully think that if you play that game now for the first time with your eyes open and everything, that game is not as good as you remember it being. Like I think, and it's similar to the vein to where like GoldenEye is literally impossible to play nowadays. You just can't play. That's a video that you just can't play, basically. I think a lot of that console hasn't aged really at all. And I think Ocarina is a video game that I enjoy, but think Link to the Past probably did better. certainly in a manner that is more visually pleasing. So yeah, I have no beef with it. So if Frank is okay with it, yeah, you got it.
Real quick before we throw it to you, Frank, I do want to throw out a couple other games that like I contemplated as an SNES game, but ultimately the Zelda like 1-2 punch is why I picked that one. Because I also am a huge longtime fan of ActRaiser, which is a very often overlooked game for the Super Nintendo era that doesn't get nearly as much love as I think it should. And then another one in that same vein, one of my like all-time favorites growing up was a game called Secret of Evermore. It's basically a pseudo successor to Secret of Mana. It's by Squaresoft. It's by the same team behind that. But it was a weird like you basically instead of like having magic spells that you just used like magic points for, they used alchemy, and you had to basically like mix and match ingredients to like have your spells. You had like a companion dog that would travel with you the whole time, and you went through like different eras. So like you start out in like prehistoric times, and your dog becomes like this like cave beast kind of thing, and then you go to like this weird like French era kind of like 1700s kind of thing, and your dog becomes a poodle alongside you, and then there is like a futuristic area where your dog becomes a robo dog, and like there's just a lot to love about that game, and I didn't want it to go through this whole thing without also giving Secret of Evermore a little bit of love. And Zombies Ate My Neighbors is also a very fun Super
Zombie
Nintendo
Ate My
game.
Neighbors, absolutely.
That's a great game.
And shout out to Skate or Die.
Those are some other Super Nintendo games that I at least wanted to throw out there as like, hey, I struggled with this too. But hit us, Frank. You gonna veto me and shoot Link to the Past off this list?
So yeah, well, okay. I want to talk about it first. I didn't mean that to come off that way.
You're like, yeah, Trevor, I do want it off this list. How dare you?
I definitely like Zelda, and I'm definitely not what I would particularly call like a Zelda expert or kind of like have played them all. But A Link to the Past is one of the ones I do greatly appreciate, and I do like a lot. I like. I think the first one's really interesting for kind of a lot of the new things it does and brings to the table. And I think Link to the Past just is kind of it's almost like an Uncharted 1 to Uncharted 2 situation. It just does that, but it does it way better in every possible way, you know?
Yeah.
And I definitely I agree with kind of a lot of what's already been said about it and how kind of great it is and fun to play. And I definitely got a lot of enjoyment out of it. I kind of prefer the 3D ones just in general. Me personally, that's probably just kind of the time I came into gaming and kind of went forward with it because I definitely have been kind of Zelda for me is kind of mostly going backwards. Um, and I also don't personally love all this hate that going on Wind Waker over here. And that's
that's what I'm saying, Frank.
so this is why I want to know, Logan, if I put my veto against Link to the Past, will you help me bring Wind Waker onto this list?
So here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Logan does have the next pick to close out this round.
I mean, I for sure am not going to pick Wind Waker, but it's that thing too, Frank, of like, me and you have all of the power because Trevor and Cam have no veto. We can literally pick any game we want at this point in time because we on our picks. They like that's the thing for me. I was going to say was like, in my pick, I can do whatever the fuck I want because Trevor and Cam can't stop me, and Frank.
What have we done?
You already did that though with Sonic 2. So.
Yeah, you did it already.
We
let
even
that happen.
Crazier.
We let Sonic 2
there are no
happen.
more rules. That's the thing. Like there are no rules now, right? Because like Frank is thinking it's like it's just we're madmen here. So like here's the thing, Frank. Part of me wants to be like, sure, fine. I'm okay with that. But part of me is also like, but like, I got no real beef with whatever. What I will say, because I have no reason to like fuck over Trevor here. What I will say is that I'm not going to touch any Zelda game in my pick because I'm not going to waste one of my picks on that shit. But I will say that in episode 5, you will be the first person to pick. So if you I'm not going to be in a compass of murder here at all. But like, if you want to fucking kill somebody, you can kill them and do your own thing. That's on you, man. But like, I won't stop you and I'm not going to help you. I'm just going to be a bystander watching.
That is true. You can veto it, and if the team does not keep it on the list, Frank, you will have the first pick next episode to throw your Wind Waker love out there.
Oh my god.
And honestly, I would respect that. That's fine. I love also that it makes the Super Nintendo the cursed console of this list.
The Super Nintendo kind of unexpectedly became the battleground of this
Unexpectedly,
list.
I thought it
Yeah, we
might
didn't expect
be, but
that.
do whatever you want, Frank. I guess. But
It's like
Trevor is giving you his blessing, so you can't feel bad if you
I
kill him.
do appreciate that because like I don't have any beef with Link to the Past. Like I said, I like it and I
Yeah,
think it's a
that's the thing.
great
I don't
game.
either.
And I think it deserves to be on the list. Like I don't even disagree. It's what I thought you were gonna bring in
Yeah.
when you vetoed Chrono Trigger. But I want like more than nothing now to just veto it and bring Wind Waker into the discussion.
Do it, Frank.
Just because of me, like you already, I already got hosed by Logan at the beginning of like.
What did I
earlier
do? I
in the
didn't veto
episode.
any of your shit, man. Don't pull that on me.
I will admittedly be a little annoyed if my choice gets vetoed because Cameron spoke against Wind Waker.
You know what? Actually, maybe that's for the best. I might just take Wind Waker on this list if it means I screwed over Trevor in the end.
SNES is a
After he
cursed
vetoed
console,
me.
yeah.
That also shows though that we do still have some power even if we don't have a veto, Logan. What are you gonna do, Frank?
I gotta beef, yeah. Do whatever you want, Frank.
I don't wanna like I don't wanna like troll this way, but I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna veto A Link to the Past.
Oh,
All right.
Oof.
I have all the power now. I'm the only veto person left.
I already
Vetoed
regret this
by
decision.
Frank.
Should I not?
All right. That's
Actually,
Feel amazing.
Logan, if you try to pick something or if you try to veto something that the three of us want on, we still get to take away your veto.
Yeah, but when I pick right now in 10 seconds, you all can't do jack shit about it.
Oh
Very
god,
true.
what are you gonna pick?
He is
What are
gonna
you
pick a
going to
Zelda,
pick?
isn't he? I fucked up.
So to put forth Logan and Cameron, you have the option to override the veto. What say
Oh.
you?
Cameron, it's up. I mean, what do you want to do, Cam?
I want to override the veto.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a weird plot
I
twist.
shouldn't have been so forthcoming with my Wind Waker plot here.
I was about to say, like, yeah, you. It depends, Logan. I mean, how do you feel about it?
Hmm.
You're gonna
See,
you're
so
gonna
here's
you're
the
gonna.
thing.
So here's the thing, Logan. I feel
Yeah.
like you flaunting all this power that you have sounds very Trump-like.
Oh,
What a weird. What a weird. Whoa.
That's a
whoa,
gambit, Trevor. That is
Whoa.
a gambit.
Just
Whoa.
saying, like it
Whoa.
seems like you're trying to
Whoa.
exercise executive
Whoa.
privilege
Oh my
all
God.
over the
Alright,
place here.
All right.
That's a bold
Alright,
that's a bold
alright,
move. Let's
All
see
right.
how it
You know
plays
what?
out, Con.
You know what? Fuck you. Fuck yeah, whatever. I'm with Frank. Fuck that. That was a terrible pitch. That was a bad pitch, man.
All right, Trump.
It was a bad pitch. All right. I didn't like that at all.
I was gonna say, like, I was like, Trevor, I don't know what you were going for there. That was a bold
Just-
move.
I was going for an entertaining podcast, guys.
Some people want to
So
watch
am I.
your burnout here. is what- Yeah. God damn,
All right.
holy-
All right, the veto stands.
Hmm.
Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo off the
I'm
list.
sorry, Trevor.
That's okay. I don't fault you for playing the game. Logan, hit us with whatever your pick is gonna be.
So this is the thing, like, coming into this episode, I had one for, like, the PS2, and then I was thinking of, like, something for the Switch. But in the course of this episode, with 2 vetoes being used, like, it's, like, blown up what I can do. And so now I'm sitting here like, all right, I can just get really fucking crazy.
What wild choice will you pick that is like
This is
one
the
that
thing,
all
like-
of us would be against?
We've now, like, thrown the NES in play, right? Because Trevor knows what NES game I'll pick if I pick an NES game. He knows what I'll do. And so it's like, do I do that? Do I go to the Switch and, like, just get, like, one of the games I mentioned earlier as, like, a safe pick now? Like, do I throw in, like, Hellblade for the Switch now? Is that a thing? Because I can just slot that in? Do I go for the PS2 and just, like, take that in one fell swoop and, like, make that not a Battlefield? Like, there's so many more options than I thought I would have. And, like, admittedly... Oh man, even the PS2, like, I can kind of get a bit weirder with it than a pick that, while divisive, I think would have been maybe safer. Man, I think, oh man, what I'm gonna do. This is tough, like, cause, like, again, the natural, like, troublemaker, mischief kind of filled kid in me wants to just really just go for the NES and like just be fucking goofy.
Do
But also it's like
do it. Pick Monster Party for the NES.
it wouldn't be a Monster Party. That's not what that's trash. But
Is it the Adams Family 2?
Fester's Quest.
Fester. Uncle Fester. Fester's Quest. Yeah, is it Adams Family 2 Fester Quest?
I'm dancing around 3 games. So like, should I go NES, PS2, or Switch? What do we?
Remember how we said that the PS2 is going to be the most divisive and most like warlike?
I can end that.
You can make the end of this episode a total flip and twist.
I think you should try to
we're gonna
slide
do
in
the
on the
PS2.
Switch. I think you should try to slide in with the Switch and just get one of your modern picks in. You were talking about how much you love those and how it got kind of cut off. Like, this is your chance.
That's true as well.
Like, if I pick a Switch, it's gonna be Hellblade. I mean,
I support that.
I go
I
for the Switch,
support
it'll
you.
be Hellblade.
Even though Hellblade does not play well on the Switch.
Doesn't matter.
Great game. Support that.
Hellblade's phenomenal. I think ultimately for me, I'm gonna go for
I want
the
to know
PS2.
what your PS2.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for PS2, and I basically have 3 possible contenders for the PS2 now, because one that I wasn't gonna go for earlier has now opened up to me here. And so basically I can just like talk you through my thoughts, because again, this is it. It's gonna be a PS2 game here now. So like I can do Jack 3. I can do it. I can throw in like a Medal of Honor game now. I can get our first person shooter fix here. I can do it now.
What did I do? Why did I do this to us?
And then I can either go for the 2 that I'm kind of leaning towards, which would be Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Hell yeah.
Or Bully.
Both are great games. Both
I will
phenomenal
put this
games.
out there, Logan, that the PS2 game I teased last episode,
Yeah.
you have named it. So
Ooh.
Really?
one of the games you threw out there is what I would have put on the PS2 as well.
It's
I hope
Jack
it- I hope
3.
it's Jack
Trevor's
3.
secretly
It's like,
a
hope it's
giant
Jack 3. Yeah. Hell yeah, Trevor. Hell yeah, my man.
I'm pretty sure we've had extensive conversations
We
on
have.
my thoughts on Jack 2 versus Jack 3 versus the original Jack and Daxter.
And I'm curious, what? Because I don't think you've played. Now I'm curious. I'm just trying to figure out Trevor's game. I don't think you've played Bully, or if you have, you've never talked about it with me.
I've played Bully, yeah.
Bully's awesome. Bully
I'm-
is, funny
Bully's
enough, the opposite of its
fantastic.
name.
Billy's like I think Bully is such a fantastic video game, and it's a video game that I think for totally subverts and is unique in the entire Rockstar catalog. Like it's like there's no other Rockstar game like Bully. We are just playing somebody who is just legitimately just a good person, just trying to do like live a life, and like doesn't want to necessarily be like a fucking kingpin or anything, or like an outlaw, anything. He just is a kid trying to survive school, and it's really hard, and he keeps getting bounced around, and nobody believes in him, and he's got like no support structure, and he's just like kind of figure it out on his own. And like if you're not a kid who could identify with those themes and those, I think, kind of struggles, then I don't know, man. Like, and even more so like the larger kind of controversy around that game, and how like the game was criticized and like torn apart and shredded for something it wasn't actually. Like, you're not actually blaming the game, but you were blamed for being that, ties into the game's themes and like larger message so well. Like I love Bully. Like I can't stress enough. Like that game is fantastic. Is so underappreciated. I feel like I feel like nobody played Bully, in part because of the controversy around it. But I unfortunately am not picking Bully, even though I love it so incredibly much, because the video game that I'm gonna pick, which I probably could have gotten away with anyway, is gonna be Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
That's fair, yeah.
Because
That's a great game.
I just think it's a masterpiece. Like I just think that it is phenomenal, right? It's one for me where like it is, I feel like I came into games later, or like fell in love with games later in my life, right? Like I talk about the fact that like Grand Theft Auto 3, when it came out, which is when I was 9 years old, is like the moment like this is it. This is the thing that I love, and like blew apart my like childhood mind. And then like the year later for Vice City to come out and like just be everything 3 was, but better and bigger and brighter and just magic, right? And like Grand Theft Auto Vice City is one of those games where like it's in my top 3 or 4 games I've played the most. And just like sitting on like my childhood best friend's couch and like printing off multiple pages of cheat codes, right? And just like doing everything and seeing how long you could survive against like 6-star wanted levels, right? And like doing like getting like the flying tank and all this crazy shit and like just one upping each other more and more and more in terms of like the outlandish like shenanigans and goofy dumb shit you can do in that game, and like just spending hours and hours and days and weeks on that game just again and again and again going and like learning every square inch of Vice City in a manner that like I know few maps as well as that game. And then it's the thing too of like the actual story of Vice City is rad as hell. Like it's like it is, to me at least, the best Grand Theft Auto story by a Mississippi mile. Like it's not even close. Like it is fantastic. Like, it is an actual like legitimately great crime epic in its own right. And one dripping with like 80s nostalgia and glory and debauchery and everything. I think that it is everything that I would want from a game like that and more. I think it relishes being what it is. I think that Tommy Vercetti has this unabashed joy in who he is that no other Grand Theft Auto character has, right? Like, because in 3, you're a silent protagonist. You're just yourself, basically. I think that in San Andreas, CJ's got so many, like, existential, like, dread-filled problems and everything like that. I think 4, who the fuck cares about Nico? I think in 5, 1.5 of the characters are cool. But Tommy Vercetti knows who he is, and he's just totally relished the fact that, like, he wants nothing more in the world than to be the biggest gangster in the world. And also just get payback on everybody who fucked him over at the beginning of the game, and it's rad. It is basically Scarface, but better. It is every 80s crime drama, but better and more
It's
gleeful.
Scarface crossed with Miami Vice.
Yeah,
basically.
right? And it's
And
rad.
yeah,
like,
that was the
your
one on
pick?
my list.
Yeah, and like Lance Vance dance, come on babies,
Love
right?
it.
And like Ricardo Diaz and like everybody, like, and Avery Carrington, like these characters, just like that world is so rad. And like I think for me, because I was a 10-year-old kid who had to like secretly go downstairs and like play the game when I wasn't supposed to be because it was my older brother's game, and like my parents didn't want me to play it, right? And so like doing that and like playing the game for like a few hours at a time when they were like out at the office or out at school kind of thing, and then like hopping off and like jumping out like whenever they got home, and then like playing through and beating the entire game of Vice City like 4 or 5 times. Like I've beaten that game so many times in my life, and like I've gone back to it years later, and it's still great. It's still rad, and it's my favorite GTA map. It's my favorite Rockstar world, probably, maybe with the exception of Bully, because I love the world of Bully. But it's my favorite Rockstar game. It is easily one of my like seminal gaming experiences in my life, right? Like if it wasn't for GTA Vice City being like a phenomenal masterpiece game in its own right, I'd still probably nominate just because of the impact it had on me and like show me what games could be, right? Because like Trevor alluded to earlier, I always say like I play games for their story, right, for their narrative, and it was GTA 3 and then Vice City that showed me that video games could tell really cool, goofy, silly, dumb, funny, like totally engaging and thrilling stories. And like we've obviously progressed a lot since then, but also like in a lot of ways I feel like it was the peak of GTA as like what it was. And so yeah, like I'm gonna pick GTA Vice City because it's great, it's rad, and I absolutely love that game. And like, obviously, I mean, like as a final shout out, like there is no better Rockstar soundtrack than Vice City. Like it is perfect from start to like finish. Like the fact that no matter what you do, the first song you hear in that game will be Billie Jean, which is one of my like top 5 or 6 favorite songs of all time. It's just like, I knew from right then and there, like this is gonna be it, fam.
Yeah, that was the only thing I was gonna like add on because I echo everything you said. That game has incredible style, and especially as a follow up to Grand Theft Auto 3
Yeah.
was a great like diversion from what people were expecting kind of
Yes.
thing. Of like you had this great mafioso movie to then take it back to the 80s and throw it all out there. Yeah, the only thing I was gonna add was like the soundtrack, but you tacked on
Phenomenal.
that at the
Every
end.
single song in that is just like That's because like I feel like usually for GTA games we all kind of have like the one or two stations we listen to, but like literally every single station in Vice City, I'd be like, I'm fine listening to this. Like they're all so good in that game.
Yeah. Now this is where we have to tell you, Logan, about the secret veto, where we're. I'm joking.
Well, and like as like another thing too, like as I like talk about it, I think of more things for Vice City, but like it's cool for me because Vice City is what made GTA like a larger universe, right? Like Phil and like having like Phil Cassidy come in, like and then like all these characters who were in three be themselves from like 15 years earlier, right? And like show you like kind of who they were beforehand, right? And like then San Andreas obviously did the same thing, and then like in 4 and 5 there are characters that kind of float around and mix up, and like it helped to begin to establish like the larger GTA like cinematic universe, right? And like I think its sense of like mythology is really cool, right? And like I think there are so many characters in Vice City who have like these crazy like rise and falls and rises again and falls again, and like kind of this giant turn in emotional arcs, right? And like the fact that it established still my favorite like empire building aspect of that game, right? With like having like the like properties that you can buy and own, and then like do side missions out of that and like unlock stuff from there, works really well in a way that like I didn't love it in San Andreas really at all. And in 4 and 5, it's just like again whatever to me, but like it works. So it's both big enough, but also like not overly complicated and like annoying like it can be in later GTA games or like GTA knockoff games. Yeah, like it's an incredible video game, right? And like I think the arc of Tommy Vercetti from start to finish of that game and like where you go to where you end is just it's an amazing ride. And so yeah, I mean,
I'm
I love
I'm
it.
I'm really glad you ended up picking it over me because you were able to speak to it way more than I would have been able to because it
I
has
mean, like,
been a while, and I love it, and I definitely like stand by it being an appropriate pick for the PS2 era.
yeah,
But like it came. I want to say I was probably already either like I think I was probably already early in college at that time, or I was very close to it because I definitely remember San Andreas being like my first or second year at college,
mhm,
um, uh, and Vice City. So like I that was an era where I was like I played games, but I was also very busy with college stuff. Or if it was like while I was in my senior year of high school, I was busy trying to get into colleges
yeah,
and stuff. So I don't have I have not played it nearly as much as it seems
yeah,
like you have, but yeah, like the time I did put into that game like sticks with you because of
yeah,
its vibrancy, because it
yes.
was riffing on like 80s
So many
nostalgia,
80s movies of
and
nostalgia. Yeah,
like that is basically the nostalgia of my generation is like
yeah,
everybody looking back and being like, "Oh my god, the 80s were so cool. Look at how much money we made and look at all the coke we were doing." And ha ha
hmm
ha ha. And like I know more about Scarface from Vice City than from
yeah.
actually ever watching Scarface because I've never watched that movie, but I know given the parallels that I've heard of from Vice City, I know like the rise and fall of Tony Montana
hmm
kind of thing. So, yeah, it's a phenomenal pick.
Yeah.
Frank, anything you want to add?
I don't have a ton to add. I definitely agree with everything that's been said. Like, I absolutely love
hmm
Vice City, and I
Hell
think
yeah.
you had even mentioned it too. But out of those three on PS2, Vice City is definitely my favorite. Like for the style, the soundtrack, like it's all just amazing. And something I didn't even think about either too is like you mentioned the map being like one of the best designed maps, and I was thinking about it in my head, and I was like, I could like accurately pick that up and drive around right now.
That's the thing, right? Yeah.
Like I know where the hotel is and where like
Yep.
the shady alley I always used to get the motorcycle
hmm
was, and there was the mall, and like I know where I remember where like
Yeah.
the secrets were and how to get there and the bridge.
Starfish Island. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and that's kind of amazing, honestly. And yeah, I really just I do love that game, and I fully support that, honestly. Yeah.
That is very much like I would love to see what a Vice City looks like now
In 2019. Yeah.
in Grand
100%.
Theft Auto. In like I would
Hmm.
love to see
Yeah.
Rockstar revisit that era now, doing like throwing all the resources and time and effort that they put into GTA 5. I would love to see that as like the GTA 6 is like, all right, let's do Vice City again, bigger, better, bolder. And hey, we've got the money to throw at all of the music we want to do again. So
Hmm.
I would very much love to see that. Um, so it sounds like there's a lot of like unanimous love for the game. Any any other, since this is cutting off the PS2, any other games we want to kind of give honorable
Shout out.
mentions to and shout out and highlight. Like one of the first ones that comes up when I'm searching is a game that definitely didn't resonate with me as much as it did with everybody else, but Shadow of the Colossus.
That
Yeah.
did none for me.
And given that we've also already eliminated PS3, PS4, that's certainly out of there. Pretty much any of the
Yeah.
Team Ico games.
I adore Legend of the Colossus. It's one of my favorite games of that era. It is a game that when I think of games that I've seen, and I know that in recent years it's gotten a lot of hate for its control schemes, but I saw people who have never played a video game really in their life, so that maybe like a little bit of Mario, pick up the controller, learn how to play the game, and then like slay their first Colossus. And it was one of my favorite things to see. But I will also say another game that needs to be shouted out, and I think it's because it's a super underrated game. It's a super forgotten game. But it definitely needs to be talked about because of what it's done for not just RPGs, but in general video games. And that's Radiata Stories. Radiata Stories is a game from Square Enix. It is an amazing game and tale of a young man's journey from being a farm boy to being the greatest warrior in the kingdom, yada, 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 generic stuff. But the two divergent paths that it has, the human path and the non-human path, are so varied and different and give different looks and views of characters that you otherwise wouldn't get. The fact that, like, oh, why don't all the humans and non-humans get along? Because there's a disease that literally when they do get along, the disease, like, destroys them. Because it's like it's very much of an interesting game with an incredible story and soundtrack, but what really is that stands out that makes it a legacy game is that one, it has a day-night cycle. Two, every single character in that entire game, every single character, whether they're recruitable or not, which by the way, there's like over 100 recruitable characters in this game. Regardless if they're recruitable or not, every single character has a schedule that they're programmed with, that they then follow through with. And there are some days where they don't follow that exact schedule. And for a PS2 game to have this kind of built-in, scheduled out system is incredible. And it's an amazing game, and I just really felt like it needed a good shout-out because I don't ever feel like it gets the love that it deserves. And it innovated and built so much going forward from it, so...
Yeah, I had definitely never heard of it until you just spoke of it.
Most people don't until I mention it. Most people.
So
don't.
that would have been a game-ass game to pick when nobody has vetoes left.
Also, shout out to the entire Dot Hack Legacy Saga game series.
Yeah.
Infection to Quarantine, and then the GU series. Just incredible games, top to bottom. Wish could shouted them out, but once again, I would not have ever picked a single one of those as a game for this list because they really are all part of one slice of a longer story. So,
yeah, Logan, you mentioned Jack and Dax, or Jack 3 in particular. Yeah. That whole
that whole trilogy for me.
That whole trilogy, like that is a very interesting trilogy because obviously 3 that you mentioned very heavily influenced by GTA. Having come out after
2 as well,
after, yeah, 2 and 3, very much, and they've Naughty Dog's come out and said, yeah, like we wanted to make our version of Grand Theft Auto, and this was the characters we had at the time, kind of thing. And I personally don't like those games as much as I like the first one because I prefer the platformer aspect of it. But it was an interesting to see how quickly the influence of Grand Theft Auto kind of took hold in some of those circles. And then obviously I think Metal Gear Solid is another big one that we're pretty much culling from the running at this point.
Oh, that's right. Snake Eater was going to be my go-to.
Sons of Liberty and Snake Eater both were on the PS2.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from you, Frank?
Oh man, like the PS2 is definitely like one of my favorite consoles ever and has such like a great library. There's so much that like I'd want to shout out, but like just off the top of my head, a couple that I think of is like kind of the Ratchet and Clank series, kind of going hand in
Mm.
hand with, y'all's Jack and Dexter. Like I definitely was more in the Ratchet camp. Like I definitely really loved all those and the unique weapons and comedy there. Also, shout out to the Devil May Cry games. I guess we're pretty
Oh my
much
gosh, yeah.
ruling them out, but like I guess I wasn't really gonna try to die on any of those hills. But man, yeah, that's a franchise I've come to love more recently. I got going backwards and playing those. And also shout out to all those Tony Hawk games, SSX Tricky, all the Need for Speeds. Like that was what a generation for that. Like that's something we'll never get again. That was just so great.
Yeah, you had Kingdom Hearts, which I know of this panel. I think Cameron is certainly the most diehard, but like those first couple
Yeah,
Kingdom
I
Hearts
couldn't make that
games
fight.
of that era, like those were weird anomalies, but like they definitely
Hmm.
made an impact.
I mean,
Um, this was also the era that brought us like Guitar Hero and stuff like that.
yeah.
So
Oh, that's
This is,
true.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is what I was gonna say is that like we all knew the PS2 was gonna be a potential battlefield because I think it is. I would argue by far the most eclectic game. Like it's just everybody has these weird niche games, kind of like Kim and Shout Out, that they just love on the PC, right? Like I can sit here and talk about like War of the Monsters and Area 51, like these, and, like Cold Winter, and these and like Medal of Honor Rising Sun or European Assault, like these deep cut games that just like are really really great that not enough people played, and like I think a lot of it comes back to like the PS2 is like king of the consoles, right? Like it's 50, 60 million units ahead of the next types of thing. Like it is just like a giant fucking towering console, and it also just lasted for like a decade. Basically, it was old as shit when they finally stopped making these things. And I think it's why I've always loved the console, right? Like it's the console like I really grew up on, right? Like it is by the time I got my next console, it wasn't like a Nintendo like Wii or whatever, because that doesn't really count the same way. But like the next PS like PlayStation console I got, I was almost 20 years old, and I was 9 when this came out. When the PS2 came out, 8 or 9, and so it's like I had it for a decade. Where, like it was my only console because I didn't get a PS3 for like years after it came out, and so it's like I played all of these games over and over and over again. I went down into like the bowels of the console, played like weird B and C tier video games. Like I played GTA Vice City again and again and again. I played 3 again and again and again. I played all of these games so much, and like it's why I love this console. Why it has just a special place in my heart. Like it is, I feel like what people say about like the NES and the SNES, right? And so, and like God of War, we didn't even talk about like God of War 1 and 2. Like I love those first two God of War games. And like I look at all of that and I view kind of the total sum of what that console is and what it meant to me, and I just think that it's Vice City is such a perfect embodiment of that system as a whole. And I think kind of the zaniness and the wackiness that kind of pervaded it. I think the over the top goofiness that pervaded it. And I think also the console's real attempt to tell serious, thoughtful, engaging, and well developed stories, whether it was in the Metal Gear series, whether it was like Shadow of the Colossus, whether it was Bully or any of these other things. Like I think Vice City is a good embodiment of the entire console and its highs and lows and everything between, mixed with an incredible soundtrack and mixing. And so yeah, I very much am happy to stand by Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
yeah, I think one of the things you touched on that was great about, and this was very much like the last element, last era that you really got to do this, was like the PS2, the Xbox, and the GameCube era was like that was basically at the end of Blockbuster, so you could go
Yeah,
out and like rent a million
yeah,
different games,
that's the
and
thing.
not only was the PS2 the most eclectic library, it was the most vast library. I want to say
Yeah,
like 1,400 games at the end of that cycle, and that's in a world pre-digital distribution kind of
yeah.
stuff.
And that's the
Um,
thing, right? Like that's why like I mean, because we're all maybe with the exception of Trevor, because he might identify more with like the SNES or something like as a kid, but like certainly me and Frank, who are similar aged, like we grew up on this console, right? It's like it is a thing of like I'll acknowledge my inherent bias in that aspect, but like it is just a it's a really great console to grow up on. I feel like to just kind of experience everything that video games had to offer at the time, because there was just like 1,400 video games out there. They were all just like most were bad, some were like amazing, a lot were good and okay, and like playing a lot of good and okay games like really cool, and like it was, I think, a really fun one to kind of explore and grow up with.
Just to clarify, I said 1,400. I completely misquoted on that. Nearly 4,000 games.
Yeah,
Wow,
I was gonna say,
alright.
I was like, that's,
I,
I was
and
like,
I-
1,400
yeah,
sounds
I
like the Atari.
yeah, I don't remember
library
where
that
I don't
was
remember where
unlicensed.
my wires got crossed there, but I
But yeah,
double
like
checked
that's
it.
4,000 video games, right? And it's like that thing of like, again, like the Blockbuster one is a good example for me, where it's like, yeah, it was going to the local Diamond Video or Family Video or like these kind of like local chained movie stores in like Nixon, Missouri, right? And like just going down the aisles of like, what haven't we played? What haven't we played? What haven't we played? Haven't tried this one yet. Let's try that one out. And like sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, right? But like there were a lot of my favorite games in PC era were just ones where it's like, I haven't played this game yet, and the back of the box looks cool or interesting enough, like let's give it a try, right? And like, or even ones where it's like, man, the back of the box looks like fucking trash, but I played everything else in this aisle, so I'm gonna play this video game now. And that's how I discovered Cold Winter, and it turned out to be like a really dope, awesome, like gritty, serious, M-rated spy game. And it's like awesome. Like there are just a lot of games that you get to like play and experience, right? And I think we're probably better off for moving into like the digital space in terms of like what that's done. But man, in terms of just like finding random stuff one like Saturday evening kind of thing, I feel like that's the thing. Like there's a lot of charm and like romanticism to like older video games and like older video game consoles, and I feel like the PS2 era is the last one to have that still. And yeah, like it just Vice City's a great video game, and the PS2 is a dope console. And so yeah.
I certainly applaud all that, and I take back the Trump comments because you did not enact your will upon us like you could have in a way that would have pissed the rest of us off. I think
Yeah, exactly.
we all buy in on the GTA Vice City train. None of us are upset by
video game.
that selection. So excellent pick.
And
to
also
round
shout out
out
to Lance
week
Vance
4
and the
here.
Lance Vance dance.
And
Lance Vance dance always.
and this is very for me. I'm starting to think of how exciting next week can be, because the order next week is going to be back to our original order of Frank, me, Logan, and Cam, so I can still dick over Cam and get Zelda on the list if Frank does not beat me to it with Wind Waker or something. And yeah, Logan has the only remaining veto, and I'm definitely like, I'm very curious to see what would pull the veto out of you.
I'm just gonna say this: I don't think Logan's gonna use his veto. I don't think he has
It's
the
interesting
courage
because
to.
the big one, like again, like the ones I was most like, I don't know what you could do at this point. Yeah, like because Breath of the Wild and Zelda 1 came on the list. I've gotten my Mario game on the list, right? Like I've got the game I wanted from Mario.
I mean,
so
right
like,
now both of them could still be on the list, as Zelda is still
I
in
guess
the
it's fair,
running.
but like Zelda 1 won't be on the list, right? And it's like so like, and Frank will go first, and if he does what he said he will do, he'll put Wind Waker on the list, kind of thing. But like I've gotten my Mario game. I got like that's the thing I was gonna say is that like basically all of the big things I've gotten on the list except for like one thing I've gotten on here now, and like I still have a shot to get that one thing on here. So it's like I don't know like what could prevent me from using it, kind of thing. That'll be interesting. Like I got like the games I was most concerned about getting on are on it. So it's like at this time I might just use it, just be like, well, I have to burn it at some point, kind of thing. Just fuck somebody over, but. I'm curious.
Nice.
I can't wait
We'll
for
for sure have to have an episode 6 too at this point. Next, we've had 3.
Yeah,
vetoes.
we're gonna have
episode 6.
we're gonna have at least 3 extra games we're gonna have to pick
so
on
we'll
the
have
list.
an extra episode for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could just save it until then.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you, everybody, for a very fun, very exciting week in that we had 2 vetoes this week. Not only
Double
one.
veto,
and,
yeah.
and the
Only 2 games
SNES.
got added, yeah.
The Super Nintendo survives
The
through
bloodbath, yeah.
through 2 vetoes to until round 5 next week. So that's going to do it for us. You can follow all of us on Twitter. You can follow Logan at LeftyLogie. Anything you want to plug for 2 weeks from now, Logan?
Yeah, I'll for sure have stuff on the site. There will be more episodes of That Wanna Be Film Class you can go check out. Obviously, there'll be more episodes of That Nerdy Site show you can go check out. While you're doing that, you should go check out the Austin-only episode along with Trevor, because that was a lot of fun to record in person, and I think it was an episode I'm really proud of. You can go check out all of the 30 hours of streaming from our launch extravaganza weekend. We didn't talk about that last week's episode, but yeah, we did that. Extra live stuff. You can go donate to all of these things at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. I will potentially have a Death Stranding interview to read by this point 2 weeks from now. Certainly I'll have something on that game. I might have a film review or two up on the site as well. Trevor will have things you can go check out that he'll shout out in 10 seconds here. And then I will have my welcome piece on the site that I meant to do this week, but I didn't because we were all recovering from launch weekend, or at least I was. So lots of things to check out.
Yep. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot. Anything sorry. Follow Cameron at RevCabot, 2 B's, 2 T's. Anything you want to shout out there, Cameron?
I don't have anything in the pipeline outside of if you guys end up donating enough or giving enough on our Patreon. I have to start planning out a podcast. But outside of that, not much else that I can predict this far out.
Well, I mentioned that you were talking about that in a stream with Scott White, I think. And I commented in there, I was like, I'm still going to basically run that podcast. You're just going to be a guest on it, so you can calm down.
Okay, cool. That makes me feel better.
Yeah. No, it'll just be kind of us hanging out. But yeah, it'll be me driving that show as well. So don't you fret there, Cameron. But yes, if we get to $100 per month right now, I think we're sitting at $75 per month over on Patreon. So if we get up to $100, that will kick off the next milestone there of that wrestling show with Cameron and I. And maybe additional guests coming in and out. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to plug, Frank?
Yeah, I'm on every platform at Irrelevant Jokes, and to kind of piggyback off of what Logan said a little bit with that launch weekend live stream, those are archived on Twitch, and we'll be breaking those out and kind of uploading them on YouTube too, and we might even be breaking those out into kind of smaller individual kind of Let's Plays as well.
Ultimate Chicken Horse thing probably.
100%, 100%.
Redemption arc, yeah.
Who will overtake Trevor the champion? You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Just keep an eye on thatnerdysite.com for all of the latest stuff. Let's see. Based on when this episode is going live, I might write something up about Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which I'm going to be seeing in San Francisco in a couple weeks. So that's going to be fun and exciting. That's that. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site. Please, especially as we're still in this launch month window, rate, review, like, subscribe, follow us everywhere you can, on podcast services, on YouTube, on Twitch, and if you are feeling extra generous, you can support us on patreon.com/thatnerdysite. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.